I'd like to address a few ideas that I find in most conversations about relations between the sexes that many people, including conservatives, feminists, black pillars, red pillars, etc., all blindly embrace. And this is a dangerous idea. Most of them are all guilty of this in some measure, and that's why I'd like to approach one idea in particular that's a bit insidious, which is male disposability. Now, male disposability can be defined in two ways, and as much as I agree with one, I vehemently denounce the other. The former, of course, is the descriptive and I suppose societal one. That society views men as disposable and not valuable entities, that they should be excommunicated from polite company or be made to take disproportionate blame and responsibility for minimal gain. We see this in conscription, where men are expected to man up and fight wars that do not serve them as individuals and may very well not even serve them as a nation or as a collective. As Smedley Butler said, war is a racket. You pay billions of dollars to weapons manufacturer who have every incentive to get you shot, bombed, wounded, and killed in order to justify their own existence and take a profit. Even before wars were conducted on the scale of the First World War and other wars like it, modern warfare in general, warrior culture and honor culture, such as what was common in the Middle East, amounted to this. You were supposed to earn status, among other things, by risking yourself to fight hostile men, to protect your tribe. And in the modern version, it's your family.
When my son was born and the doctor handed me my son, it's crazy as a father because I knew I would die for him, right? And I don't even know this dude. He could be a terrible human being, but I would die for him. But when they handed me my daughter, oh, it was different. I was like, oh, okay. I would kill for you. I became a murderer overnight. Because the family dynamic to me is crazy. Like, I would die for my son, I would kill for my daughter. 100%. And what's the biggest threat to women? Men. Look at that. Men.
I personally didn't find this very funny. Second of all, if you're like this guy, why don't you just teach your daughter to protect herself? Teach her to use a gun or a bulletproof vest. I'm sure she can do that. We got women in the military. Women are the real victims of war, says Hillary Clinton. Or let's look at family court. While in most disputed cases, custody is given to men, this was not always the case, and the myth of the gender pay gap still influences the decision making of judges on the matter of child support. It used to be even worse back in the past century due to the so called tender years doctrine, pushed forward by, you guessed it, feminists. Men take on the brunt of the burden, even in ironically called no fault divorce proceedings, when it comes to asset distribution, alimony, and child support. In so called patriarchal countries, like maybe Russia, it's quite worse. Just alimony, just on paper, it's only now becoming gender neutral. If we did this to any other social group, such as a race or a religion, this would be completely condemned. But again, men have to man up. Men have to take it, and they're not worth more than that. And you see this on all sides. Conservatives, including Ben Shapiro, of the Young America Foundation.
Hi, my name is Audra, and I'm from Orange Coast College in California. In the new Me Too age, and with the left dominating the conversation with what to do about sexual assault and how men are the problem, what is the conservative approach, in your opinion, about how to prevent sexual assault and how we as a society can protect sexual assault victims?
Okay, so a couple of things that we can do systemically. One is that we need to create a culture where when something terrible happens to a woman, she feels comfortable going to the police and reporting it. I understand that it's very difficult for women to do this. I understand that's very rough. And we need to make it easier. We need to find ways that make it easier for women to do that, because people who sexually abuse women should be, I would say, beaten the hell out of, but that's not a real legal term. They should, as I've said many times before, rapists should be castrated or killed. As far as
A good job on the pandering there. What about men who are falsely accused?
in terms of what we as a culture really can do, what we really can do is we need to actually train men. When feminists say things like
Train men.
right?
So, what about female
Not a decent
rapists?
man in the history of the world whose father said to him, "Son, don't rape." There's not a decent. It's never happened, because the truth is that when you're training a child to be a good person, what you're actually training that child in is being a good person, not being a bad person. right? You don't train your kid, don't be a bad person. You train your kid, I expect of you certain things. So men are built for creation or destruction. I have a 2-year-old son. He's either building blocks or he's tearing them down. That's all he does. And this is just true for how men tend to work. You either train men to be protectors, and that their job on planet Earth is to protect more vulnerable people. This is men, women, and children, right? More vulnerable people. It is their job to particularly protect women who do require special protection from other men because they're the most likely to be preyed upon by other men. That men's job is to stand up and do something when they see something like this. Right? Obviously, that is a major factor. What the feminist movement has tried to do is remove, in order to fight sexism, they want to say that patriarchalism has created
Wait,
a
that's
sense
my
of
job?
superiority among men. That's not
How much am I being paid
accurate.
for it?
Instead, what they've done is
Do
they've
I have the
removed
right
men
to
from the
leave? Do I
system.
get,
They tell men don't protect
I don't
women.
know, paid parental leave? Do I get holidays for this
Treat women as
job?
objects. Men's job is to protect women. A real man protects women. A real man is not.
Feminists? This is Marilyn French, a famous second wave feminist and novelist. This is Andrea Dworkin. She is a second wave feminist, one of the most popular ones. And even incels who claim them to represent the issues of men. And we also see this in other areas of policy. Men's support shelters for abused men are next to none compared to women's shelters, which reject men. They say that they give shelter to men, but in practice, how does this happen? Now, for the second definition, which is the more, let's say, normative form of male disposability, formulated as a value judgment or a conclusion about nature. The claim that men are disposable and should be more expendable than women. The claim is usually a variation of the following. In nature, a tribe with such and such amount of men and such amount of women needs fewer women than men to survive due to the difference in reproductive capacity. Therefore, men should be more expended for the good of society. And it's a useful idea. It provides a just so story, a self serving justification to dump undue responsibility on low status men because that's who's gonna get sacrificed. Would Senator Josh Hawley be willing to send himself or his own son in war? I don't think so. I'm not any more expendable than you are, or any TikTok e-girl. And it even comes packaged with an appeal to nature. It's really nothing more than an opinion, though, one that's simple, obvious, and wrong. First off, the obvious part. We're not tribes. There are about 100 uncontacted tribes in the world, numbering a few thousand people in total. Outside of those pockets, there are billions of us. There's no shortage of people, and if anything, with the demographic collapse in several countries, we need all the people we can get if the show civilization is to go on. Second of all, this leaves quite a few unspoken assumptions taken for granted that all women are able to give birth, which they aren't, if only because of menopause. In reality, it's many more things. Wouldn't that make them worthless if their children are old enough, though? And that they can do so with no great investment from a man required. They can't. And even single mothers depend on welfare or a job that isn't physically demanding and grants them paid maternity leave. That all men are best suited to fighting compared to all women. Not necessarily. Men have plenty of skills that serve everyone, aside from fighting, and women are more than welcome to volunteer in any modern army. And most importantly, there's a great hypocrisy in claiming that women should be valued for their potential to reproduce, when the past half century or so, feminism has been telling us that we should never measure the worth of anybody by how many offspring they choose to have or not to have, or by how much sexual activity they have to produce said offspring in the first place. If we want to believe that men are so disposable, should we also conscribe women to bear more children under duress? Would anyone commit enough to the claim that men are disposable to propose this? Because that's what you get from saying that people's worth is based on what they can do to keep society going. But of course, that's also just a smokescreen as to those people. Society is just women and their desires and nothing more. So, needless to say, as Tom Sowell says, there's no accountability for intellectuals that push faulty ideas. And likewise, without a strong public awareness, there's no accountability for talking heads, politicians, and misandrists of whatever stripe who promote these notions. And we should not trust charlatans who claim to have magical solutions to our problem by subjecting others to atrocities that they wouldn't wish for themselves.